This is America's best bee tree. The reason you don't see a lot of them around is it's totally useless for timber or wood. The wood is like balsa wood, it's so light. They used to use it for some kinds of floating fishing plugs, fishing lures, back in the 60s and 70s, and they killed a whole lot of these basswoods out to make that. But today it rained really heavy and it's just now stopped raining, so I've come out here. But you see this tree is just completely filled with blossoms. There's no other tree in the United States that grows wild that produces this many flowers. And the good thing about these trees are they don't do it all at once. This tree will bloom and the next tree next to it will not be in bloom yet. It'll wait a week. And so it's kind of a long extended bloom. But you can't find a tree in North America that is, well, considered native. Native is just an opinion though, and so is invasive, but that's considered native and produces this many flowers. I don't even know of any of them that do this. The BB tree certainly only blooms for a few days. It's a small tree and it doesn't have any of these blooms. It has about equal to Hercules club, tear blanket, or one of those family trees like, one of those. Anyway, this tree is the best. And if you ever get a chance to plant one and you're a beekeeper, plant a basswood, also known as a tilia, cordata, or other names of the tilia. People also call it BB tree, even though it's not the same one the Americans call the BB tree. In parts of Europe, this tree is known as the BB tree because of the little BBs that are the seed pods that are left behind from each of these flowers. So this is the real reason the BB tree got famous in the last 20 years in America, which is known as, actually it's known as the Korean Evodia tree. That's not a good bee tree, but they think it is because it's called the BB tree. This is the real BB tree, the basswood, the real one. And now you see why. When the sun comes out, this tree will be so loud and humming with butterflies, bumblebees, honeybees, and every other kind of pollinator. And it's also found native, as they say, to Europe. A whole lot of things are native to North America and Europe together. Most everything is native to both Europe and North America. They're interchangeable. Bison and, all the things that are considered American in America are also in Europe, except the South American things. This tree is highly recommended for beekeepers. You can make tea out of the flowers. It smells wonderful, and it blooms pretty much the middle of May to the end of June, and that's it. And it puts a lot of nectar in those hives and a lot of pollen. They love this bright yellow pollen. And see, I'll show you something. If it wasn't raining right now, there'd be bees out here. But I'm telling you, we just got 1.5 inches of rain in an hour. It's just poured. But see, this is this tree loaded with blooms. Right next door, this tree here is also a basswood, also known as a linden tree. But as you can see, it's not in bloom yet. You see that? Those are pre-blooms. The whole tree is not in bloom. And that's the wonderful thing about them that's very unique, is that they give the beehive time to gather the nectar. See, this tree right here is already blooming, but it's been raining the whole time it's been blooming. For the last 5 days it's been raining. Well, actually maybe 9 days now we've had rain every day and the bees have hardly been able to fly. But the good thing is this one's pretty much over in another couple of days. But that one will just be getting started over there. And they're big, tall trees. This tree's about 100 feet tall. They're big, maybe bigger. They're huge trees, but like I said, they don't plant them in the forest when they plant timber because they're useless. These trees are very rare. You're not going to find very many of them. But yeah, they're known as linden tree, tilia tree, basswood tree, BB tree. Not to be confused with Korean Evodia, which the Americans call the BB tree. The Korean Evodia is garbage for bees. It doesn't even hardly bloom but a few days, and it doesn't produce anything. They're trees that are only like 10 feet tall or 20 feet tall. I've got many of them. Matter of fact, I'll show you one. This is an American BB tree called a Korean Evodia, right there. And this little tiny bit of bloom is all it's going to have. Well, it's not. That's all it's going to have right there. That little bit of bloom, and it's only going to last a few days, and that's going to be it for the whole year. And as you can see, the whole tree's not covered in blooms at all. It's just at the tip. And those are not as good as sumac. They're not even as long blooming as sumac. They're not as much nectar. And they're not even as good as Hercules club or Aurelia, which are very much close to this, that look like this and have the same growth habits. But that's how big Evodias get. This is a mature Korean Evodia tree. And I'd say that's probably 20 feet tall, and that's it. That's maxed out. I don't believe that is worth planting for bees. At the same time, and that'll be blooming in another week or two, and it'll bloom maybe 5 days max, and then it won't be any use at all. There'll be no noticeable, maybe 25 bees on it moving slowly. This here is Vitex Negundo, not to be confused with Vitex Agnus Castus. Vitex Negundo is the best bee bush you can plant. This is what they look like, and you can see it's already ready to bloom. And once it blooms, it continues to bloom until frost. Now, I'll show you a Vitex Agnus Castus in just a minute. Well, okay, we'll try that. Now this is a Vitex Agnus Castus. The leaves are much thicker, and it's a big plant when it grows. But the reason this one's not big, it's a 20-year-old Vitex Agnus Castus. The reason it's so small is it freezes down every year because I'm in zone 7, and zone 7 gets pretty cold. We can be 0 Fahrenheit, but not very often. But some years we can get that cold, but Vitex Agnus Castus can't really survive it colder than 20. Once it gets down to 20 degrees, you'll have the top die off. And it's more of a subtropical plant, and it's not good for bees. The only bees I've ever seen on this plant, or any Vitex Agnus Castus, were bumblebees, very rarely, and very rarely a butterfly would come and try to get into it. But the nectar is so deep down in there, and there's so little of it, and there's so few blooms. Now, the blooms are very large. They're very appealing to the eye. They're an ornamental. They're not for beekeepers. They don't help bees. They're not worth their space. But I still keep it because it's pretty, very pretty. Prettier than the Vitex Negundo. The Vitex Negundo is a solid bloomer that continues to bloom, and it's got a very small bloom, but it's just filled with bees. Every second of the day, the Vitex Negundo, all the way till frost. From now until frost, it's going to be blooming. And I've got a few other Vitex Negundos out there that are already opening up to bloom. I will show you a large Vitex Negundo. Now this in front of us is a large Vitex Negundo, and it's just about ready to bloom. The little tiny flowers right there will open up and some of them will be sky blue, some of them will be white, and it depends on the bush. And you can reproduce them by seeds, and they do bloom the whole summer, all the way till frost. And they're very drought tolerant, and they're very cold hardy. The Vitex Agnus Castus is much more pretty, but bees don't like it. Honeybees do not like it. The Agnus Castus is not as winter hardy. Like I said, 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and it'll die to the ground and come back up next spring from roots. But this tree right here is taking everything. It doesn't matter how cold it gets. It can get 0 degrees, it can get below 0 a little bit, it still grows. And you see it's great big. The tree behind it, that is another BB tree that I planted, Korean Evodia. And you can see a bloom if you look real close up there. It's getting ready to open up on the very tip. There's a few blooms up there, maybe. But I tell you what, they won't be worthwhile. For 3 or 4 days, there'll be 25 or 30 bees that just sort of sit on there, but they're not really working anything. They're just sitting there, kind of like they're stuck on it. But on this one here, they'll be flying in a few days, they'll be flying all over it, back and forth like they're on a honey flow, a nectar flow. And it'll be buzzing with bees. You won't hear buzzing on that. They sit lazy on the blooms on that. Like I said, the only reason that Korean Evodia is famous is because it's kind of a pretty tree. And number 2, it's confusing because people have started calling it BB tree because it is the name of the basswood. Now there's another basswood right there. You see it's in full bloom. Well, it's just starting to bloom. And just look at that. The basswood is a true BB tree. And here's why. Little BB looking things that it has before it blooms, and then it also has those after it blooms. These are the emerging flower buds, but after it blooms there'll be seeds. There'll be big round seeds. Each one will be a little seed. They look like little BBs. And they're all on these little drupes that help keep the rain. See, it's soaking wet. You can probably see the water pouring off of it. But the reason is because it rained so heavily. It won't be very long till the bees come back. And as soon as it just gets a little bit drier in a few minutes, they'll be back on it. But bees rush home when it starts to rain. They all rushed. They all didn't get to wake up this morning because they had to stay in the hive. It's been raining since sunrise. But it's waking up. So that's the good tree of Vitex Negundo, the good bee tree. And this is the real BB tree, the basswood, linden, tilia tree. The real BB tree, the real bee tree. There goes a bee already. They're starting to wake up and come out here. They'll be all over this in a few minutes. I'm starting to see the bees, even though the flowers aren't even dry yet. They'll be all over it, all over every basswood tree. This is a major nectar crop tree. And it's a big tree, but like I said, even though it's big, it's not good timber. Sadly enough, it was used for cord. That's why it's also known as tilia cordata, because they used to use it for cord. And the reason it's called basswood is because they called it bast. They used to stuff it in ships to stop them from leaking. I don't know how they do that. I'm not a ship person, but that's what it was for. It's a beautiful tree. Here's a baby one. I planted them everywhere. It's very hard to get the trees. Very hard to find them because they don't grow them for timber. And nobody ever plants them for wildlife or anything. They're just sort of a forgotten tree, and I don't know why. These are the trees you should grow in your yard. Their roots are very weak, and they don't. They're not heavy. They won't hurt anything if they fall. They're so light. By the time they die, they don't weigh anything. They're like styrofoam. Their wood is, and their roots aren't thick. Meanwhile, an oak tree like that thing will fall in, or a hickory, those things will fall in and crush you. But this thing here isn't anything to worry about. But that's all I have to tell you about this tree. It's my favorite, the basswood. And even though it's raining, the bees are so much loving it. They're already starting to come out. And it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. And the rain has just now stopped. But yeah, they love this tree. I mean, it's going to be loud and humming with bees very soon. It's already started since I began the video. There were no bees, and now there's 2 or 3. In a half hour, it'll be just buzzing. Okay, bye-bye.